Hey, everybody, welcome to the PVD Horror Podcast. My name is Dave, and today I am joined with musician Gwyn Strang, who, along with Sean Bilovecki, who is the guitarist, make up the band Frayle, which has been identified as one of the fastest rising doom metal bands and has received praise from such outlets as Revolver, which back in July named their song Walking Wounded one of the 6 best songs right now. Their new album, Heretics and Lullabies, dropped October 10th, and it is a must listen. Gwyn, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Now, Gwyn, Frayle formed, if I read this correctly, back in 2017. Is that correct?
It's actually probably 2018, but yeah, everything seems to have it listed as 2017, so whatever. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
year.
So tell me a little bit about like that formation, getting into the scene, what the early days looked like, things like that.
Yeah, so Sean and I became a couple in I think 2016. And we just wanted to have a project to work on together. He's a musician, he's been in previous bands. Um, and he he had he was drinking a lot before we met, and he just kind of lost his love for creating music. So when we get together, he stopped drinking and he had all this extra energy that he needed to put somewhere. So I actually got him recording software for Christmas one year, and he it I guess reignited his love for making music. He had all this stuff written, but he didn't have a vocalist. And
Yeah.
I'd never sung in a band before, but he heard me like singing in the bath. Sometimes when I take a bath, I'll either meditate or if I'm in a really good mood, I'll sing. And so he heard that and he's like, "You just have to sing on this." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's just do something." He's like, "It's just for us. It's just for us." Okay. All right, we'll do a couple. So then he was like, "Look, we have these 4 songs. I just want to put it out on Bandcamp. It's just a little EP, a fun little project just for us." So, okay, I'm very shy and introverted, and so it was kind of a big deal for me to let him do that. So, but okay, you can do it. And he's like, okay. So within once it went out, it started selling, and we were kind of like, wow, it would be cool if we could just sell enough to cover our Bandcamp fees.
Sure.
Um, but so we actually started selling, and then within a couple of weeks, we were contacted by a European label, and then within like 6 months, we were playing Desert Fest and Soul Crusher over in
Oh,
Europe. So,
jeez.
for someone who's very shy, that was very difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah, but now here we are.
Would you say you've gotten over some of that shyness?
I'm still very introverted. The way that I've managed it is that when like I always say the person who writes the songs isn't the person who performs them.
Hmm.
I have to kind of step outside of myself to be able to get out there and um, emote and perform. So it's still kind of a thing. I love it. I absolutely love it and adore it. I'm so glad that Sean pushed me outside of my comfort zone to actually do that. Um, but yeah, I still get nervous before every single show, and but it's I've learned to absolutely adore it. So
One of the interesting things is like, seeing you now versus seeing you in the music videos and everything. Um, like you definitely have like this style to you that's just very unique. But it also now I'm kind of like putting this together, like it's almost performative. And I'm wondering, does that also kind of help you like push through some of the shyness because you're almost like presenting as not your typical self?
um so I think that the things that I wear on stage is just amped up a little bit, right? It's an
Yes.
extension of the music, and Sean and I are both very visual people.
Mm.
So even though the music always comes first, um, we want to create like an entire world to immerse people in, and the visuals are definitely part of that and help get us there. So all the things that I wear, it definitely is me. The one thing that I will say, um, is me, but also helps me hide a little bit is the face jewelry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that helps hold back a little piece of me, for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. So, I've read that your influences kind of range from, like Portishead to Bjork to Black Sabbath, kind of like a medley of all those things, I guess. But like one of the things that really intrigues me is the idea of like, beyond just those musical inspirations, like the style inspiration, the sound in general that you guys developed. Like what was the onset of that? Kind of how did you develop that? And like how would you even describe it?
I don't really know how to describe it. And I think we have just kind of stopped, which is, we start with heavy witch doom. Well, is it really doom even? Is it, I just call it gloom because it's, and it's kind of doom plus, I don't even
Yeah.
know. But like the inspirations, yeah, I mean, Portishead is a huge inspiration for me musically, vocally. The Cranes is a huge vocal inspiration for me. Allison Shaw. But I think the visual stuff, there's inspiration everywhere and you just have to look for it. Now, some people get so caught up in their day to day that they can't, look at the
Yeah.
roses and you smell the roses kind of thing. So, but
Yeah.
I think that if you're an artist, it's your job to find those little pieces of inspiration everywhere you possibly can. So,
Sure.
just from even the art gallery here to Pinterest, like
Yeah. Yeah.
wherever, just find it. Make it your job to go out and find that.
It's funny you mentioned the European label contacting you because when I first saw, the visuals, I was like, oh, and the idea of being able to talk to you came up. I was like, oh, they must be European. I wonder if they're gonna have a thick accent. And then I read Cleveland-based doom metal band, and I was like, that is not what I was expecting at all. What's the scene like in Cleveland right now? Is it very European, or was that just totally false on my end?
Uh, um, the Cleveland scene, like the people come out to support their local bands, right?
Yeah,
So it is very much that, but it's um it's not a rip roaring scene, like we get passed over a lot by the big bands. I don't know why, but yeah, I mean it's an interesting place, but I do think that where Sean and I come from, as far as creating something is we're both internal and so any little pieces of information, I don't know if it's like ADHD or what it is, but all these things come in and then we have to like express it. So I don't think that that's an external thing. I think it's more of an internal thing.
yeah. You said a lot of the bigger bands kind of overlook. Would you
Yeah.
say the Cleveland scene in general, or
Yeah. So like we get bypassed by and
yeah?
people will play Detroit, they'll play, but they won't come here. And I don't know. I mean, we have some pretty good larger venues, but
Mhm.
it's just it's just not somewhere that people want to go, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm in Rhode Island, obviously a very small state, but I feel like our local music scene is always, and our art scene is huge. But yeah, I guess for years we kind of suffered from the same thing. Like a lot of the larger acts would overlook it to go to like Boston, which obviously we can just drive like an hour to Boston, not a big deal. But still, it's nice to have things in your state, in your area, in your city. So
Right.
yeah, that can, but it's nice to also be able to like create and build the scene that you want. So I guess that's kind of where you guys play a part in that, like building up the scene, right?
Yeah, it's it's one of those we don't play here that often. Um and I don't know why. I think it just kind of happens that way, like we have very big booking agents and we're still kind of a smaller band, but we we get told where to go, right?
Yeah.
So here's your routing, go.
Yeah.
And so we don't really have a lot of say in where we get to play.
Now, in your opinion, what do you think is causing that kind of like fast action rise for Frayle? like what do you think the draw is? What do you think is like pushing some of that?
I have no idea, but I am very
I
thankful
love
for
that.
it. Um, if I had to wager a guess, I would say, Sean comes from a background of like Sleep, Karma to Burn, Crowbar, and I come from a background of, Gothic industrial, Bauhaus,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. So, and we write our pieces separately, right? So he'll write a riff and then I'll come in and I'll create a vocal sketch over top, and then we'll kind of decide, he has a library of hundreds and hundreds of riffs, and so we'll go through those and we'll decide which ones we want to flesh out a little bit, and then whatever ones we decide we want to flesh out, then we'll go through and we'll pick the ones that we actually want to demo. um but everything we do is completely separate, and I think that's what keeps it so clean, I
Mm,
guess, because I do feel like if we tried to collaborate and, write something together in the same room together, I feel like it would just be a muddy version of what we have now,
sure.
you know?
It is interesting listening to your albums. I would have assumed you had been established for like a long period of time. Like you said, it sounds it's clean. And it just has something to it that makes you feel like, oh, this must have been around for a while. Like this can't be only their second album now. Or when I was listening to the first album, like this can't be your first album, your debut album. So there is something there to the music, which is really impressive. And also one of the things that I think was super smart, interesting as well, was the choice of covers. Which I think that's kind of getting a little bit more like accepted and wanted again. There was a period of time where covers were huge, and then they kind of died off. And I think people are kind of like open to them again. And you covered Lana Del Rey's "Summertime Sadness," which I think is a very interesting choice, but also makes sense considering the gloom
Right,
metal.
right.
um and I just wondered like what made you guys choose this song, and like what was the thought process there with that?
Yeah, so I think Lana is just the queen of melancholy, right? Like her
Mhm.
voice in and of itself just emotes such sadness, that it seemed like a natural fit for me. But I do like whenever we decide that we're going to do a cover, we usually pick a few, and same thing, we'll flesh them out and then we'll demo the ones that we want to do. Um, there were only a couple of things in Summertime that after we demoed it, we decided that we needed to change. And then we sent it to our producer, Aaron Chaparian, and he added that pause and the breath before going into the chorus. And, once we had that, I was like, this is magic. This
Yeah.
is this is the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I just like I appreciate your appreciation for other genres and not just be like we have to stick to this one kind of area here. We can't go outside of that, and even like acceptance of maybe like pop or um indie or whatever it is, just being able to accept other genres. I think that's because like there's so many music listeners like myself out there who just like all types of music. I definitely don't pigeonhole myself in one, anything but country, I always say. So
Yeah.
so that's great. And then as far as the new album goes, Heretics and Lullabies, you know like I said, when I first listened to it, I absolutely loved it. I loved the singles leading up to the full album. I thought it was a great choice of songs to lead up to the album as well. They were all very catchy, but also just like made me feel something and made me excited about listening to more. Um, what is it that you hope that listeners glean from the new album? What was your intention with the new album? Like I feel like when you have your next album, you always have to have like some kind of intention of what you're hoping to capture with this one. So what was that for you?
Yeah, I think with anything that I write, I want it to be kind of a sanctuary, for people who have felt, on the outside or marginalized or anything like that. I want to create a safe space. So while some of the songs are perhaps a little bit more accessible than previously, that my goal and aim is always the same, is that I want to walk you through all these things that I've gone through: heartbreak, depression, anything like this, because I know there are other people out there who are suffering with that as well. And I want to be able to take you through that, but then always give you a glimmer of hope, to let you know that it will get better.
Yeah.
Every day runs out of light, every night of pain, right? So
Did
I
you just
just,
make that up right now?
no, it's a lyric.
Okay.
But yeah, I want people to walk away with, if you're feeling depressed, you have to feel it, right? You have to
Yeah.
get through it. You can't go around it. So to feel it, but also to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That so and it's interesting, like that idea of being more accessible. What does that mean to you?
I don't know. Like it's one of those things where we write what we write.
Yeah.
And then, I think that Heretic to me seemed like a more accessible song because it had more of a bounce. Same with Walking Wounded, a little bit more of a bounce
Yeah.
to it. We definitely turned up the BPMs a little bit in some of the songs. So I think that's probably a little bit more accessible. Um, but at the heart, it's still very frail. At the heart is still.
Do you think some bands are afraid to or like nervous to make their music too accessible because they feel like they'll lose their core audience or they'll lose something to their band? Like what do you think it is about that idea of like like even having to say like it's a little bit more accessible? I feel like it's almost like a warning to some people, but it's not. Like I don't think that's something your band would have to worry about. But what do you think about that concept?
I do think that there are people who worry about that, and I do think that there are people that are like, but I mean, come on, just write what you want to write. If
Right.
it's coming from your heart, who cares if, like, to me, I think it's amazing. If I have something that I'm trying to get across, right, which I do, I have something that I want to tell people, then why would you want to keep it to this tiny little group of people for what? Right? To me, that's being a poser, right? Like
Yeah.
people talk about, to me, that's being
Yeah.
a poser. Like just do what you want to do. And if it appeals to a wider audience, amazing. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
then you've got your core audience, like just do what you want to do. I have a
I
strong opinion about
No,
that.
I think that's great. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, forever I've kind of considered myself a little bit of a music snob, maybe to like an actual like maybe not always the best version of it because at times like I get really upset when a band gets radio play and then their music sound changes following that. That bothers me because I feel like that's a very intentional choice and you're almost making music for radio play at that point.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's different than what you're talking about. You're talking about like evolution, you're talking about, you change, people change, and the things you maybe want to create change at those times or they feel different. So I think that's a way better way to kind of follow your art, follow your passion, making things that way versus like, no, I want this to make the radio or I want this to be
Yeah.
commercialized or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, right? Like never chase the streams, like never
Yes.
chase the plays. You just have
Yep.
to chase whatever you're doing in your heart. And if, like you said, if it happens naturally, amazing. If it doesn't, it's
Yeah.
still there and you're still doing, it's still art, it's doing what art is supposed to do.
Absolutely. I read that you and I apologize. I did this was like kind of a quick thing right even before I hopped on here with you. But I had read that you actually filmed a video in Salem for this was a few years ago, I think.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because we're only like we're spoiled. We're like an hour and 10 or 20 minutes from Salem. So
Wow.
it's a little drive that and I just actually did it this weekend. But you being from Cleveland, I was wondering when you filmed that video, was that your first time in Salem? And also like what is your feelings about Salem? Like, what's that experience like when you go there?
I love Salem. I would live there if if I could. Um, we go there twice a year. Well, at least
Awesome.
I go there twice a year.
Hmm.
So my family is in Canada.
Okay.
They're in New Brunswick. So to go home, we have to drive, right through. So we take a half hour bypass and get to Salem
Yeah.
and then continue on our way the next day or 2 days after. So I absolutely adore it there. I mean, it just has Oh, here comes my cat. It has such a great feeling, and even though you know, horrific things happen there, it still has. I think they've really turned it around and turned it into a positive thing.
Yeah.
Where the you walk there and the energy is just amazing.
Yeah. It's this excitement. It's shared love for all things kind of dark, kind of macabre, but also like you said, you're also kind of honoring something that happened, like this historic event that impacted so many people at the time. And
Right.
Salem's just one place where that occurred, but it's obviously one of the most notable,
Infamous. Yeah.
yeah, infamous ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And you go and you take a look at all the areas, where all this
Mhm.
stuff happened. But yeah, we filmed a video in front of, well, it started in front of the witch house
Yeah.
with a girl's roller skating. So we thought it was kind of big middle finger, to what happened there so many years ago.
Yeah. That witch house is probably like one of the most visually, I don't know. There's just something when you look at it, you're like, oh my goodness, that is like such a beautiful but dark, um, like just scene when I mean, obviously when it doesn't have 100 tourists in front of it, right?
Right.
Like right now, this month is the worst. Like going to Salem right now in October is horrible. But outside of that, if you go off season, it's like just it's such a great scene there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we went, we were actually really lucky. And I think we were the only ones around that area. So we got a very clean, clear shot of,
Yeah.
her. So it was amazing.
You are currently sharing the camera with one of the most regal and beautiful cats I have seen in a while. That is absolutely adorable. I know you had mentioned before we started recording, you and Sean are both big horror movie fans.
Yes.
All right, and that's right on brand with us, obviously here at PVD Horror. So I was going to ask you, what are some of the types of films you like? Are there certain subgenres of horror that you kind of gravitate to?
I mean, anything vampires,
Oh, okay.
I love vampire movies. Years and years ago, gosh, it has to be 20 plus years ago, that Blue Moon, do you know Blue Moon?
Hmm.
They released the Subspecies movie. I think it was a trilogy. I could be wrong, but that has to be among my favorite horror movies. It was kind of
Okay.
intentionally bad, like,
Yes.
yeah. And Night of the Demons is another
Oh,
one
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I adore. I actually, it's funny. I watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
I know, but the actor from Night of the Demons, she showed up on one of those TV shows as a pet psychic.
Yes, Amelia Kincaid.
Yeah,
Yeah, she is a pet psychic. Yes. Yep.
I thought it was
She's
crazy.
actually been on our podcast and we had a whole conversation with her about that,
Wow.
which is amazing. And also it's funny because you mentioned subspecies and we had the creator Ted Nicolau on our show as well. He's been on a couple of times. They've recently had released, I think there's a fourth one. I think it's the fourth one. Um, Bloodstone, if I remember correctly, but that came out last year or the year before. I can't remember. All right, so another question I want to ask you specifically about horror movies is rock and roll horror movies. Do you have any that kind of come to your head as films that you feel have captured the art of metal or rock and roll very well?
Right, I'm trying to think. I've got a visual in my head of one, but I don't remember the name.
I'll give you a couple of examples. Like Trick or Treat was one. I think Ozzy and Gene Simmons made appearances in that. That was back in like 1986, I think. And then there was Black Roses was another one. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've
There's
seen
this
that one.
horrible but so fun one called Hard Rock Zombies, which I highly recommend everybody watch.
Okay.
But yeah, and oh, and Deathgasm was a more recent one. I don't know if you've seen any of those.
I saw the one with Gene Simmons and
Okay. Yep.
Ozzy, yeah. So I mean, that was it was a zillion years ago, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
I mean, anything where you can marry the two is going to be a good flip.
Absolutely. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance, Deathgasm is a super
Deathgasm.
fun one. It's like a horror comedy, and it's more recent, and they just came out with a sequel. But actually, one of the things I wanted to say before I wrap up is, are you familiar with the movie Hellbender by any chance?
That I am not. No.
Okay. The reason why I bring that up is it's a family that created that, where they're friends of ours, the Adams family. I think it's on Shudder, might be streaming a couple other places. But the family also makes music for their films. So they've made about 4 or 5 films now, and their music is very reminiscent of like some of this style of yours. Like I would say Gloom would be something that also would probably represent their music. So I was going to actually suggest or recommend, if you weren't familiar, definitely check out Hellbender. That's the name of the band that they in their film. I think that you would actually dig that, because like I said, it's the daughter is the lead vocalist, and the dad and the mom are guitar and drums. So it's a really cool little outfit, and then they're making indie horror as well. So it's just an amazing family.
Amazing. Sean and I always talk about making a movie, and we actually thought that we wanted to, like, on the last album we were like, we should do like a series of videos that if you watch them all together it would be like a horror movie.
Yes.
But we thought about it, and we thought, like, we watched, gosh, there was like Beyonce tried to do something like that with, and it wasn't good, and we're like, if
Sure.
Beyonce can't do it, then
yeah,
what makes us think we can?
there was an interesting kind of concept like that, but not like separate videos, but like the band Boy Harsher had released, and I forget if it was like 20 or so minutes of basically this storyline with their music playing throughout, and that was really cool. I could totally picture you guys doing that. I hope you guys actually do something like that. That would be amazing.
I would love to. I like the idea, like you said, of a shorter version, but yeah, it was something that we would definitely love to get into. So maybe
Yeah.
coming up.
I hope so. Gwyn, thank you so much for joining me. This was a very interesting and enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, things like this mean so much to bands like us. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Everybody, make sure you check out Heretics and Lullabies, available now. Oh, actually, tell people where to find you and a website, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find us on napalmrecords.com. You can also find us at Indie Tree, and you can find us, we have our own website, fraileband.com.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Have a good day. See you later.
It takes a lot of love for a person to do